Hello friends, this is Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming and welcome to my patch notes in a nutshell. I'll be going through the patch notes rapid fire style and pointing out all the things I thought were interesting in a concise manner. So if you wanted to see an hour-long reading of each patch note, there are plenty of those out there, but this is not it. Let's get going. The Metamorph League is starting, but you already knew that. Only thing to note here is that the portal from the Challenge Awards looks super dope. They are adding some bow skills, mostly ballistas and supports. Ballistas are totems for bows and replace ranged attack totems. Also, new div cards, uniques, and currencies that are associated with the new endgame are being added. You can now load your loot filter onto the PoE website, meaning you can associate your loot filter with your account and play it if you log in away from home or on the console even. You start from the middle of the atlas, and there are zones of maps now. Sextants apply to the whole zone rather than a single map, and those in proximity to it. Xana will sell shaped and elder maps sometimes now at high atlas progression, as the new endgame no longer includes the shaper and elder. Blightwing core with a 10% spawn rate on maps. Blight encounters will guarantee at least one oil or blighted map per spawn. Fortify effect is now multiplicative with similar effects, meaning no more functional immunity from damage with enough Fortify effect. Shock and Chill got super buffed, making them require less damage by far to take effect, and having an increased minimum effect as well. Shrapnel Shot is now Galvanic Arrow instead, and scales off projectile speed instead of area. It also gains flat lightning damage as the gem levels. Explosive Arrow is much cheaper on the old mana pool and now has a bunch of mechanical changes such as no duration refresh, instead exploding all of the arrows when the initial arrow's duration ends, explosion radius that scales with gem level, scaling from weapon damage, and more ignite damage per arrow in the target. Arc has had its chaining buffed, not quite to pre-nerf levels, but enough that in combination with the shock buff, I have little doubt we'll be seeing some arc miners as league starters. Burning Arrow now has full fire conversion and has a neat extra burn debuff for some extra single target damage. Caustic Arrow had its damage and area buffed. Discharge can hit as many things as you can manage now instead of being limited to 30 targets. Elemental Hit got a long-awaited damage nerf. Ice Shot got more damage and chills as if it hit twice as hard in exchange for losing its chilled ground effect. Icicle Mine got its projectile speed nerfed and fires less projectiles. Lancing Steel is still in the game, but I've never actually seen anybody use it. Lightning Arrow got some damage buffs and shocks as if it hit twice as hard, along with some scaling shock effect. Lightning Spire Trap got hard nerfed, sorry racers. Lightning Warp warps more now. Molten Strike scales slightly harder. Orb of Storms got nerfed hard as well, sorry again racers. Pestilent Strike can now hit slightly farther away at higher levels. Punishment now helps deal with enemies with physical damage reduction. Rain of Arrows got a bit of damage. Raised Spectres now require actual investment to get your army going. Raised Zombie got gutted hard and my girlfriend is literally crying. Scourge Arrow doesn't scale nearly as hard with Hyri's Ire and Abyss Jewels, but got some flat chaos damage to encourage you to play it as it's originally intended. Shattering Steel continues its meager existence. Smoke Mine's move speed buff is reduced at low levels and scales back up to normal, another hit to racers, but honestly not that big of a deal, it's still going to be faster to use it. You get Siege Ballista a bit later on now, and the damage has been nerfed a bit, but you can instantly have 3 of them now. Spectral Throw got another damage buff, maybe someone will actually use it now. Split Arrow got another buff, maybe somebody will use that now. Soul Rend got a duration buff, but continues to suffer from somewhat low area. Stormblast Mines was nerfed at low levels, but buffed at high levels. You can aim Raging Spirits now, that's pretty neat. Tornado Shot has the projectile speed of its secondary projectiles nerf, but is that going to stop the magic finders? Toxic Rain got a slight damage buff. Vol Burning Arrow now ignites much harder. Vol Spectral Throw tornadoes a bit faster. Venom Gyre got some much needed damage, and you can no longer destroy your graphics card with Volatile Dead. Ranged attack totems are now ballistas, which do less damage but summon more totems. Feeding Frenzy got adjusted in a very downwards direction. Impale now impales harder against armored foes. Inspiration got slightly nerfed, especially on the crit side. LMP got better, maybe even usable. Minion damage now starts off weaker but scales up to current levels. Mirage Archer got hit pretty hard, making magic finders everywhere very sad. Onslaught received perhaps one of the biggest nerfs, reducing both its duration and proc chance. Point Blank got a massive nerf, but it's probably still really good, and that's a testament to how OP it was. Volley also looks much better, probably going to be pretty solid for leveling projectile builds, honestly. There were a ton of changes to the skill tree as usual, but honestly it's just best to download the latest Path of Building update and look over them there. Necro gets less minion move speed, and both it and the Guardian have had their Ascension auras combined into a singular aura for each separate Ascension to prevent buff stacking with Mantra of Flames. Slayer's Endless Hunger now causes unaffected by bleeding rather than immunity to bleeding. Maybe some build with the Red Trail and the Golden Rule is possible now. You can no longer craft +1 curse on body armors, and multi-modding got nerfed to a maximum of 3 crafts. Shaper and Elder mods got nerfed or removed across the board in order to make the new influenced items seem cooler, with a notable exception of the reduced reflect damage taken rings, which actually got a pretty huge buff. Fossil crafting was nerfed pretty good, lowering some values and straight up removing a couple of highly valued mods, particularly Maim on body armors, so RIP to 7-link melee builds. Spell damage on casting weapons has been buffed pretty heavily, as have the individual percent elemental damage rolls. Shaper and Elder Scarabs just straight up make a map shaped or Elder influenced, but give a reduced amount of additional influenced rares. The Volley Fire Jewel is now limited to 1, but it has the power of all 3 of them combined to compensate, which seems pretty good. Azanath's Chant will 100% trigger socketed spells on bow attacks, with a 0.3 second cooldown, making for some interesting new potential builds there. Hyri's Ire got hard nerfed. Quillrain got soft buffed. Zoph's Nurture is a legit 7-link for Ignite bow builds now. Snakebite got some damage over time multiplier for poison per frenzy charge to make it a little bit more appealing for poison builds. Namahu's Flame got a big damage buff on its balls. Good news for all of you Molten Cycloners. Sybil's Lament now has its reflect damage reduction at a much higher level. And Voltaxic Rift now shocks as if it dealt twice the damage and breaks the shock limit, allowing for 100% more damage shocks. The Epilogue got a couple of new zones. Bosses have been scaled up throughout the game, and the endgame bosses scale more consistently for a nice feeling of progression rather than easily getting to T16 maps and then getting wrecked out of nowhere with a build you thought was great and handled all previous content as soon as you run into a Guardian. Monsters got a bunch of additional armor and resists, making all of that armor penetration stuff from early seem more valuable, and making me think perhaps I should League start an Inquisitor. Engaging with Betrayal will now result in more Scarabs, which is pretty sweet. There's a bunch of new map stuff, much of which I mentioned previously, but now Vol side areas can spawn in maps. Can't wait to see what a level 84 Vol area side boss feels like. Also, some pretty sick random corrupted high level 6 links are sure to drop, so watch Reddit for that. Synthesis maps can now drop as unique items and can be dropped from tier 16 or higher maps, but they'll only drop from bosses. Unique Cortex map drops will drop from tier 14 or higher map bosses. Sick, you can craft Legion for 6 Chaos now. Probably actually worth it, since Legion is super rewarding as far as League mechanics go. I hope you enjoyed this quick rundown of the patch notes. Let me know in the comment section which build you'll be playing now that you've seen the changes for the upcoming League. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I will see you next time. Bye!